Hello and welcome to the CX Files for Thursday, 28th August 2025. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil. This is the last episode of the COVID specials that we're running this August 2025. We've gone back and looked at some interviews from 5 years ago when the COVID pandemic arrived and the CX industry had to sort of change completely overnight. This last one, we're replaying a May 15th, 2020 interview with Juve from Concentrix. Kathy's still at Concentrix now, so I guess it would be great to catch up with her at some time this year with an interview from 2025. But in this review, you can hear how Kathy described the previous 3 weeks had been 3 years of digital transformation in just 3 weeks at Concentrix. Okay, Kathy, thanks for appearing on the podcast. First, I think it would just be great to catch up with how Concentrix has been handling the crisis to date. I mean, I assume you've largely moved to a work-at-home agent model for the immediate future.
Yeah, actually, it's a great question. So, as you know, Concentrix is a very large CX solutions company, and a very big component of our business is call center. And that's the part of the business that definitely has been severely impacted by COVID. We have over 200,000 call center agents around the globe in over 100 countries. So you can imagine we've had kind of an up close, very personal look of what's happening around the globe for business, right? So from our business perspective, what we have experienced is a massive shift to work at home. And a substantial part of our agent workforce now is in a work at home status. And that's been really a rather extraordinary effort between our company, but also the brands that we serve, most of whom did not have work at home prior to COVID for a variety of reasons. I'll talk about that in a moment. And it's been working actually very well. We're seeing very good productivity yield out of our agents. We're actually seeing very good ESAT from our agents. We're seeing good NPS from our customer and our experiences. So there really has been sort of a one world approach to this, everybody pulling in, working together to keep business going. And it's been a very interesting experience from a business perspective, because despite the disruption to the business, we, along with our clients, have figured out a way to continue to do business and to do it well, despite the crisis. But eventually we have to get back to normal, right? And so we are in the process of working closely with our various countries where we operate, and also working closely with our brands around when we go back into the centers, how dense will those centers be? What's that right mix between the percentage of agents that are going to stay and work at home for some time? Because we are concerned about a rebound of the virus and certain governments across the world needing to reinstate some of the restrictions that we've been living with. And so we need to have a very agile approach as we head back to business. But it's definitely been a very exciting, very disruptive, but also very heartening in terms of what is possible when you work together really hard as a company, but also with your clients.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you mentioned the new normal there as well. And analysts are really talking about this immediately post the crisis. We're talking about a new or a next normal. But don't you think that we're just largely seeing a lot of the digital transformation we expected to take 3 years happening in about 3 weeks?
Now, I think that's a great point, Mark. In fact, this is probably now an oldie at this point, but there was a funny piece of content running around social media about a month ago around, who in your company has had the biggest impact on your digital strategy? A, your CEO, B, your CTO, or C, COVID. And we definitely have seen COVID have a big impact. And what's interesting is, we have a large part of our business also that is all around digital transformation. And we have a lot of technology, natural language IVRs and asynchronous bots, and you name it, anything that we can do to help create really smart, personalized digital interactions. We're working on it. And a lot of clients we're working with, had timelines to fix natural language IVR this was a priority for, first quarter next year. Or, we've been really, really hard on chat. We think chat should be retired and replaced with asynchronous messaging. And it was like, well, we've got this priority. Let's do that in 2 quarters or 3 quarters from now. And we've definitely seen a pretty significant shift in prioritization of these projects from next year into now. And it has been interesting too to see that technology investments for those that kind of can afford it, right? If you're in certain segments where you're just really devastated, think travel, right? Your options are pretty limited, but there are many, many segments of our customers where their business really is not impacted. And in those situations, we are seeing some very strategic reprioritization of work to all things digital so they can get the right digital experiences. Because Mark, one of the things we have seen is a lot of clients, we're relying on our digital channels in those first few weeks of the crisis. And to be fair, very few people, we all know the 5 or 6 brands that do digital great. It doesn't include most of us. Those experiences weren't great. They actually drove NPS down because a poorly designed digital experience can really work against you. So those that were really needed work had a big spotlight on them. And so the great news is that there's a lot of tools, technology, and understanding now for us as an industry to put in very cost-effective digital solutions. So like, for example, asynchronous messaging. We really think that's a big part of the future. And a lot of reasons for that. One is it's a better experience because we as consumers are very accustomed to this nature of asynchronous through the way that we text with friends or use WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or whatever tool that is your preference. But we haven't seen that shift wholesale to businesses yet, more so in Europe than in the rest of the world. But surprisingly, it hasn't really hit the kind of adoption rates that I personally would have thought it would. And there's a lot of reasons to create a great asynchronous experience because the agent efficiency goes up 30 to 50%. So said again, you need 30 to 50% fewer agents for messaging than you would for chat at a time where agents are a rare resource, right? So this is a great opportunity to really take a look at journeys and really think them through and design experiences that drive better NPS. Because if they don't drive better NPS, it doesn't matter what your cost savings is. So I think without a doubt, we're seeing a big acceleration of all things digital.
Yeah, that's interesting because certainly here in Brazil, where I am, the adoption of tools like WhatsApp for interaction between customers and companies, is almost universal. If you're yes. not offering that kind of asynchronous communication, you're not in the game anymore. Yeah, so we do see certain countries in South America, certain countries in Asia, not all of them. Europe definitely is ahead of the game, but even then, there's a lot of room for improvement. But the U.S. is very behind with asynchronous and some of these other channels. To be very clear. So, do you think then that you mentioned about the C-suite thinking about projects that they already had kind of projected for 2021? Certainly, like you mentioned about the verticals. If we're talking about running like a cruise ship. Business, clearly they're just in a holding pattern, but people like e-commerce, gaming, they're seeing like meteoric growth right now. Do you think that most of these companies will be pulling projects into 2020 then? Yeah, I think we're seeing this is very, very interesting question. We're seeing 2 things with companies that are experiencing really an explosion of growth, right? You think about even the telecommunications companies, right? Everybody's at home. We need more bandwidth. We're consuming more media than ever. And the companies that you mentioned, we're seeing not only a prioritization of all things digital, and also upgrading other systems like your voice of the customer. It's another part of our CX solution suite we have, which is really helping customers think about voice of the customer. And so, if you're growing and you're adding, 10% to your subscriber base every week, every month, or every day, which is some of our customers experience. Then are you looking at your right customer experience properly? Do you have the right tools to measure that? Were your measurement tools really all around the old world, not the new world, which is really focused on empathy and sentiment?
And so there's been a lot of shifts in reprioritization there. And then, of course, all things around the technology stack. But Mark, what's also interesting is we've also seen a tremendous increase in demand for more call center agents during this time, right? So there does seem to be an interest in talking to agents, right? So even for companies that are more digitally native, they're seeing a requirement for more of a human touch, while they're also redesigning better digital experiences. So if your business is positively impacted by this in terms of the demands for your services are higher as a result of us all being at home, then we're seeing kind of more of everything, more digital, more contact centers. And then of course we have sectors that are, severely impacted by it. And they're having to think very strategically about what they need to focus on right now as they prepare for recovery.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned voice of the customer there and how that's changing because, typically we had surveys and questions after a call and all this kind of stuff, feeding back, into measures like NPS, for example. I mean, How does that change in the more digital environment?
Right. So changes a lot, right? So we like to talk a lot about, the survey is just one component of a good listening program, right? There's so much data out there in the messaging transcripts and the chat transcripts, online, obviously social media. So, the real focus and what we advise our clients to do is really look at all your data sets, pull them into a single engine, which is the same engine that used to be used for surveys, for example. It now can consume data from multiple data sources, regardless of what survey platform you're on. And we are strongly recommending customers ensure that they haven't already accelerated all those other channels so they do quickly. And I know that's what we're doing. And it's super interesting when you see the results and the feedback. And actually, obviously, I think you get a better data set when you're looking beyond surveys. So we definitely think, surveys don't go away, but equally as important is all the unstructured data that is available from a wider base of customers that needs to be mined and understood. And to that end, what we're seeing and what we think is very important right now is that people tune their listening engines, whether it's their voice of the customer or their voice of their employee programs, to empathy and sentiment. So, for example, in our call centers, we've seen if a call is answered correctly, but if the empathy isn't there during these times, the CSAT is lower, right, than it would have been before COVID. So people, and then we're seeing this in the data where we're providing just VOC and maybe we're not doing anything on the agent side for our clients. We're seeing a tremendous interest on behalf of consumers I want to hear empathy from you in my interactions with you, whether they are through your social media channels, through your advertisements, or through the brand experiences I have with you in the call center. There's never been more focus on sentiment and empathy. And we as an industry have been talking that for a long time, but it's really come to a head here with this COVID experience, where people really, really want to know that you care as a brand, even if you can't help them.
Yeah, that's interesting because we're again talking about this new normal, and looking at this combination of working at home, improved self-service, and then these technologies that you've mentioned that are supporting a kind of like a digital new normal. I mean, what if you were listing, say, the top 3 technologies that your clients are talking about to transform their customer service? What would they be?
Yeah, natural language IVR. So believe it or not, still the vast majority of IVRs are DTMF or press 1, press 2, press 3. A well-designed, underlined well-designed, so a lot of poorly designed experiences there. It's very hard to create a good digital, simplicity is hard, right? And it takes a lot of effort and it's hard. It's hard to get the resources to do that right. And so that's why we spend so much time on it. But a well-designed natural language IVR can improve containment over 10%. What does that mean? It means you satisfy that customer in a natural language experience, And we're all very familiar with that because of our mobile devices, and we all talk to Alexa and Siri and Google every day, right? So it's a channel that we've been trained on now by all these great consumer products companies. And if it's done well, and if it's for the right process, then you can see 10% or more containment, and the NPS goes up. The second technology is asynchronous messaging. So I think, we talked about that earlier. The vast majority of brands are still on yesterday's technology, which is chat. And chat never really achieved its full potential. It did not save costs by and large. And in fact, in some cases, it actually proliferated more channel and digital touch points. There's also a design element because so many people were directed to chat where inevitably you needed to speak with somebody. So what did you do? You spent that you added now a technology cost on top of a labor cost, and then you had to spend the labor cost again through your existing network infrastructure and send it to a call center. So if you look back at the whole experiment of chat, I don't think it achieved what was intended by the industry. Asynchronous messaging changes all of that. You actually do get a much better labor experience. You can push a lot more intelligence through the front end bot to the agent so they can be more effective. And that drives that utilization. It's a better experience for the consumers because I actually quit using chat 5 or 6 years ago because I was just quite frankly, very upset with the wait times for most brands for chat, because for me, I wanted that instant response to the chat. So waiting 45 seconds today, that might as well be 10 hours, right? I've moved on to something else. But with asynchronous, I can move on to something else. I expect to move on to something else. I come back at my convenience, and then I can complete the interaction. So it's the trifecta, right? You've got, great, customer experiences, great cost savings, right? And overall a better experience. And the last real trend we're seeing is this push to the cloud. If you look at still the vast majority of brands out there, we're not in really agile structures in the cloud for all of our enabling technologies. And so that's something that we're spending a lot of time with clients talking about is this shift to the cloud. We're working with, great brands like Amazon Connect to help customers accelerate their shift to all things cloud. So I think there's also been an awakening around some of the legacy contact center infrastructure that many of us use, and the need to really create a more agile framework for the future. Not only because we need to provide better digital experiences, but I think now, in this new normal, we need to have more agile infrastructure so we can react to this again if it happens. And let's all pray and hope it doesn't again. But now that it has happened, we have to plan for it, and that's going to require a more agile infrastructure.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and definitely true, I think. You mentioned Siri and Alexa there, and I was going to ask you about those tools, like the smart speakers, and consumers searching Google for help before they ever go to a consumer product website, for example. I mean, do you think that we need to actually plan what are the kind of responses these devices and Google are going to be giving in a much more strategic way? We can't expect customers to be searching an FAQ anymore.
Right. So this is to me, I get so excited when I think about the possibilities here. You think about it, you're bypassing all the infrastructure. If a search initiates on Google or an interaction initiates in a Google search. So we're starting to see that right now with all the social properties, whether it be Facebook Messenger or whether it be Google, you name it. You can go online. For example, if you Google 1-800, I'm looking for an 800 number for XYZ brand, and I Google that, the number comes up. In the old days, we would then Google it. I don't know about you, but for me, I wouldn't even go to that brand's website to get the 800 number. I would go to Google, or I would talk to Siri, get the 800 number, and then I would then click through or call it. So now you can engage immediately with a bot if the experience is connected. So I think that's really the next frontier for our customers is get the basics up and running right now. It's now more important than ever. And then start thinking about preferences for consumers going forward. And I think it's so much easier to design them around the devices that we're using like Alexa, like Google, like these other properties out there that have made it very easy. They have open SDK kits. There's so much we can do now with these technologies to bring the experience to where the consumers are and not drive them to our traditional highways, right? Because I think there's just tremendous opportunity to create really cost-effective experiences. And a bot's a bot, Mark, right? So whether it's in the IVR and the experience comes to you through your 800 number, or through your website, or through a search engine, if you build it right the first time, you can reuse it in all of these properties. And I think really drive fantastic, exciting change for your consumer experience, and it ultimately is more cost effective.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and gives a better experience if the customer can be served much faster. Yeah,
that's right.
I mean, we're seeing a lot of dramatic change at the moment. So finally, I just wanted to ask you about this. Some companies are not going to be able to pivot quickly enough. And some are just not going to make it through this period. Your clients, they're trying to make a decision now about how to reimagine their CX. How customer experience is not just like a nice to have project, but it's going to be a critical part of their survival through this process. I mean, what are they saying to you about the difference between something that was previously just, well, that would be nice, we'll push it out to 2021, and now projects that are absolutely critical?
This has been very interesting. We actually thought that we would, some brands would consider their ongoing investments in customer experience measurement as non-essential. And we're thrilled to see, with very rare exception, it was quite the contrary. That how you listen to your customers is a important variant in how you recover, right? Either how you thrive, if you're one of those really fortunate people that landed, in the middle of this experience with a company or a product that was in high demand, just luck, right? You had to really shift to, how do I listen to all these new customers coming into my network, and how do I adapt quickly? Because they have a different problem. They have a massive growth problem, or a lot of new customers coming in that they didn't previously interact with, who may have different needs. So you needed to tune up the listening. And as we talked earlier, I think that's really all around sentiment and empathy for those brands that are struggling right now. It's how do you keep things going? How do you keep your communication with your customers going? I'm a big customer of all the hotel chains, but been particularly touched by some of the communications from Marriott. They've been very personalized. They give you hope. You can tell they're listening to their customers. So I think that there's brands that are really understanding right now. While I prepare for my return to normal, that I have to really be listening and then communicating back out through all of my channels to make sure I'm staying in touch in an appropriate way, using the data that I'm getting from all of my voice of the customer tools and my overall kind of CX strategy. So, I'm pleased to report that we haven't seen customers turn these, investments off. And these are hard choices, because for those companies that are struggling, that means something else had to be turned off because there's some companies that are experiencing some very difficult times. But I think the vast majority of companies now understand the importance of CX, and it's really about how do you really modify those tools depending on where you are in this experience. But the one guiding principle we're giving everybody right now, and we have lots of data to show this, is if you're not listening and reacting to sentiment and emotion, either you're missing a huge opportunity if you're growing, or you're really going to have trouble if CX is important in your industry. And I think that's true for almost everybody. You really have to have a fine-tuned listening device so that you're reacting to how your customers are feeling and using that to inform your decisions.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.